I had always lived a simple life in our quaint little village, where everyone knew each other by name. My home was small but warm, and though I lived alone, I never felt lonely. My neighbors often visited, bringing food, laughter, and stories of their own. The forest on the edge of the village had always fascinated me, with its towering trees and winding paths. One chilly autumn morning, I decided to venture into the woods to gather firewood. The air was crisp, the scent of damp earth strong. I never imagined that this ordinary day would lead to something extraordinary. As I wandered deeper, the golden sunlight barely penetrated through the thick canopy above. The rustling of leaves beneath my feet was the only sound, aside from the occasional chirping of birds. Then, something caught my eye, a glint of metal among the tangled roots of an old tree. My heart pounded as I knelt down, brushing away the dirt. What I found was astonishing. A large, ancient pot, partially buried in the earth. The surface was covered in strange engravings, symbols I had never seen before. A shiver ran down my spine. What was this doing here, hidden away from the world? With trembling hands, I lifted the heavy lid. My breath caught in my throat. Inside, an endless sea of gold coins sparkled under the dim forest light. My fingers brushed against the cool metal, feeling the weight of fortune in my palm. I gasped. My mind raced with possibilities. A better home, warm clothes, endless food, and comfort I had only dreamed of. But a nagging thought crept in. Who had left this here? And why had it remained undiscovered for so long? The silence around me suddenly felt eerie, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Determined to take my newfound treasure home, I realized there was a problem. The pot was far too heavy for me to carry. I glanced around and spotted some sturdy wooden planks leaning against a fallen tree. My mind worked fast. I could build a makeshift sled, tie the pot securely, and drag it home. As I fastened the cloth around the pot, a strange feeling settled in my chest. The forest, once familiar and welcoming, now felt different. Shadows stretched unnaturally, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets I couldn't understand. I ignored the unease and started pulling. The journey was slow and exhausting. My muscles ached, but the thought of what awaited me kept me going. However, as I paused to catch my breath and peered inside the pot, I froze. My heart dropped. The gold coins, once brilliant and pure, were no longer gold. They had turned silver. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, thinking it was a trick of the light. But no, the transformation was real. Panic swelled within me. What was happening? Was this some kind of cursed treasure? I took deep breaths, reassuring myself. Silver was still valuable. It wasn't gold, but it was still enough. I kept moving. With every step, the weight on my shoulders increased. Not just from the pot, but from the fear creeping into my mind. My thoughts twisted with worry. What if this wasn't ordinary treasure? What if it belonged to someone, or something, not meant to be disturbed? I shook off the thought and pressed on. But just as I reached the outskirts of the forest, the coins changed again. The silver had darkened, shifting into dull, lifeless iron. I stood frozen, staring at the pot, my fingers trembling over the edge. My dream of luxury crumbled before my eyes. A cold gust of wind rushed through the trees, sending shivers down my spine. The forest no longer felt like the place I knew. It loomed behind me, watching, waiting. Was something toying with me? Testing me? My breath quickened, and doubt clawed at my chest. Maybe I should turn back. Maybe this treasure wasn't a gift, but a warning. I glanced at the village in the distance, my cozy home calling to me like a beacon of safety. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. There had to be an explanation, a reason. I needed to see this through. I clenched my fists and kept pulling. My heart raced, my mind buzzing with questions. The pot grew heavier, as if resisting my efforts. The iron coins clattered inside, sounding hollow and empty. A part of me wanted to abandon it, to leave it in the dirt and run home. But another part of me, a curious, stubborn part, refused to let go. I needed to know what would happen next. Would the iron turn into something else? Would it disappear completely? Was there an end to this unsettling transformation? My pulse pounded as I dragged the pot one last time. The final stretch of the journey felt endless. My legs burned, my breath came in ragged gasps. The once exciting treasure now felt like a burden, a weight pressing down on my soul. But then, something changed. The iron inside the pot began to lose its luster, dulling into brittle, cracked metal, and then, before my very eyes, it crumbled into dust. My stomach twisted. I had lost everything: gold, silver, iron. It was all gone. A part of me wanted to weep, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But deep inside, another emotion stirred, one I didn't expect. I let go of the pot, watching as the last remnants of the metallic dust slipped through my fingers, carried away by the wind. My shoulders sagged with exhaustion, but also with relief. It was over. The treasure had disappeared, along with the illusions it had created. I thought of my little home, my neighbors, the warmth of the fireplace on cold nights. Hadn't I been happy before I found this cursed treasure? My heart, once heavy with greed, now felt lighter. I turned my back on the empty pot and took a deep, calming breath. It was time to go home. As I took my first step away from the empty pot, a strange sensation crawled up my spine. The air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. The trees around me seemed taller, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I turned back for one last glance. The pot, which had held my hopes and dreams just moments ago, sat still and lifeless, but something about it felt wrong. The ground beneath it looked darker, almost scorched. Had I truly escaped its grasp? A shiver ran through me. My instincts screamed that I wasn't alone in this cursed place. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers that I couldn't quite understand. My feet felt glued to the forest floor, as if some unseen force wanted me to stay. I forced myself to move, pushing against the weight of dread settling over me. The path back home had never felt this long before. Every step I took felt like it echoed, like something or someone was mirroring my movements. I quickened my pace, heart hammering in my chest. The deeper I walked into the familiar woods, the more unfamiliar they felt. Was I really heading toward home? The sky, once bright with the morning sun, had turned an eerie shade of gray. The trees, once welcoming, now loomed like silent sentinels. My breath turned ragged, my body tense with the overwhelming feeling of being watched. I forced my thoughts back to reality. It was just an old pot, nothing more. And yet the way the coins had changed, the way the air felt different, made me question everything. Was the treasure cursed? Had I disturbed something ancient? My hands clenched into fists. No, I wouldn't let fear take control. I just needed to get home. Then I heard it, a rustling sound, faint but deliberate, coming from behind me. My breath hitched. I stopped in my tracks, listening intently. The sound came again, slow, measured, like footsteps weaving through the undergrowth. My body went rigid, every muscle coiled with tension. I swallowed hard and turned around, but there was nothing. Just the empty trail stretching into the shadowed forest. The silence was deafening, pressing against my ears like a heavy weight. I wasn't imagining this. Someone or something was out there and it was following me. My pulse pounded. I needed to move, fast. I picked up my pace, almost running now, the cold wind whipping against my face. The rustling grew louder, closer. My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Was it an animal, a villager, or something far worse? My heart felt like it would burst from my chest. I didn't dare look back. I focused on the path ahead, on the safety of my home. Then, just as I saw the first glimpse of the village through the thinning trees, the rustling stopped. The air went still. The eerie silence that followed was even more unsettling than the sound itself. I hesitated, my breath uneven. My village was just ahead, so close, yet suddenly so far. I turned around one last time, my skin crawling with unease. There, standing at the edge of the forest, half hidden in the shadows, was a figure. Tall, motionless, watching. My stomach dropped. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The figure didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. I felt trapped in its gaze, paralyzed by fear. My fingers trembled as I clutched my chest, struggling to breathe. Who or what was this? And why did it feel like it knew me? The figure remained silent, but I could feel its presence pressing against me like an unbearable weight. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but something inside me whispered that running wouldn't help. Gathering every ounce of courage, I forced my lips to move. "Who are you?" My voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. No answer. The figure tilted its head slightly as if considering me. The shadows clung to it unnaturally, refusing to reveal its form. The wind picked up, howling through the trees. My body trembled, but I stood my ground. I needed answers. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure stepped backward into the darkness. My breath hitched. The shadows swallowed it whole, as if it had never been there. But I knew better. I knew I hadn't imagined it. The forest had never felt the same to me after that day. It was as if I had stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to find, something beyond human understanding. The pot, the shifting gold, the eerie presence, everything felt like a test, a warning. I didn't know what I had disturbed, but I was certain of one thing: it wasn't over. When I finally reached my home, the warmth of the fireplace should have comforted me, but it didn't. My cozy little house, once a place of peace, now felt different. My hands shook as I bolted the door, my ears straining for any sound outside. Nothing, just silence. My thoughts twisted in circles. Had I made a mistake leaving the pot? Had I passed some kind of trial, or failed it? My eyes darted to the window, scanning the darkness. The village was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had brought something back with me. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the wooden floor, every gust of wind against the window, made my skin prickle with unease. I told myself it was over, that I had left the mystery behind in the forest. But deep down, I knew the truth. Some things, once awakened, never truly go back to sleep. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt it again, that heavy, unseen presence lurking just beyond my sight. A shiver ran down my spine. I hadn't escaped. The forest had let me go, but something was still watching, waiting.